Tiny font I will increase, no worries. So hello and welcome. Today our second lecture related to functions and scope. Today it is actually devoted to scope, and we'll return a bit to functions as we discussed before yesterday. And yeah, so who doesn't know, my name is Maxim. You see me in the chat also. So what is scope? So we when we discussed functions, we discussed when the function runs, it has special value of this, and this is not scope. This is called context. Sometimes it's called dynamic scope, but it's better to call it just context of execution to not confuse with the scope. So the scope, or lexical or static scope, what it's called, is the space in the code where variable or function makes sense and it is visible and it actually exists. Not exists because it may exist longer, because runtime can return to this place in the code more and more, but it's kind of how you define the variable, and you can see it in this scope. We'll see through examples. So let me show you right away kind of so it's our previous example. So if I defined like variable a, so I can use it in the lower codes. It kind of natural way how you perceive the code, right? And you can like try a, you can increase it, you can assign to some other variable. So it's like how you see the code, and it's very like just an obvious way how it works. But there are also different scopes that we will discuss. So the scope is when you see if I write some other code in like different file, for example, you won't see this variable a. Maybe it's not surprising to you, or in other ways. So let me give you a bit of theory first, and we'll go through the cases one by one. So scopes could be different. So the first scope is a global scope, like I shown you with the file. This is a global scope if you in the browser. Or even like a better example, if you like to see it within the script. So for example, if you would add such a script, or you would include just like a file name here in the script in your web page, this variable and this function would be global, meaning you could access them from anywhere in your program in the browser page, on your page, of course. Working with the Node.js, it gets a bit different. So let me show you the example. You can see like I defined two variables, like first name, John, last name, Dean, and they are defined in different ways. So one is defined without var, second is with var. And if I run this global functions, right? Node global JS. Sorry. Again. Okay. Scope, of course, scope. Node global. Yeah, sorry. Technical issues. So let's, okay, I will increase the font. Now, is it okay now? I'll close it. So we define these two variables, and I then try to get this first name is John, and I try to get the global. This is the special variable in the Node.js. It is similar to window object in the browser. But when you define variable without var, it goes to this global. So that's why you see it's John, it outputs this real variable, but I'm calling it like a property of this object. It goes there. And if I define variable with var, as you see, it returns undefined if I try to call it from the global. So this is the difference from browser. In browser, if you would define those, let's go and take this code into browser, and I'll show you how I run this. I'll give you one maybe trick here, how I test something. So you saw multiple times probably people just entering code right here. You can do it, but if you need to enter some multi-line code and test it, it's better to go to sources, and here you have some tabs here, and there's like page, it's related to your web page, file system, where you can include your project from the web page that you are debugging, something of rights. I don't know, it's some updates code, and this is from extensions. But this snippet, it's like your workbook, so you can create like virtual files here. You can name them, and you have like an editor, the same that you have in your browser debugger. It's Grace Monkey, I guess. So I can enter, they have formatter and everything, and you can run by command enter or control enter. It shows you here, run snippet. It's called snippet. And actually uncaught reference global is not defined because we are in browser now, so we need to replace it with window. And I save it and the run, and you can see the result is different. Both of those variables are added as properties to window. And this is called global scope. In browser, window is a global scope because everything goes to window object, and it holds, let me, okay, open the actually console window, and we can open it, and it has a lot of things here, and also it has our last name and first name. Name is the name of window. Okay, so the important takeaway here is that if you declare your variables just inside your script in your file, and you just include this file naturally like you would do with the script tag, this goes to your global scope to window object. You can intersect with the existing properties, existing functions, some other files. Maybe you use some library. This will create also some names, some variables may create if it's not very good variable library, or good libraries, they try to create unique names, names library. So this is the real danger. So that's why you should not use global variables. Those variables called global. Also, you can create a function here. My function, and this function also would be global. So if you go and try to call window my function, it is there. So it might look like it's nice and easy way to create code, but it's very dangerous way to create code. So what do we have to avoid this? There is a local scope, and the local scope exists in three ways. So there is a sorry, I need to. So there is a module, function, and block scopes. So for module scopes, again for Node.js and browser, it exists. here and there. So for Node.js, it is our file, and I have another file here. It is called import global, and what it does, it requires a special function inside the Node.js global scope, and it loads the file by its path. Or if you use one of like a wrapped modules, if you install them via npm, you can use them with just name like, I don't know, Lodash, like this. Or if you are loading some included into Node libraries like a file system or events, you also call them by name. So if you include like this, the Node engine would look in the Node modules folder. So make sure you include some relative path here. So relative path makes it this file global to load. And let me put it next to it so you can see both. Sorry. So you can see both files. So here we define two variables. As I mentioned, this goes to global. This goes somewhere, but not to global because it's undefined. And okay, I changed here. So okay, and if I run this import global, and it will run all the code from this module, from this file, these first 4 lines, and then 2 lines from here, imported. First name John, imported last name, which is absent. It's not here. And yeah, to add more, like let's try to call it without global, right? Maybe it's just up there. Oh, it's not up there, and even as it's not defined, we cannot execute our code after that. It like just breaks the execution of the code at all because this variable is even not defined. It doesn't exist. It's not undefined, but it's not defined. There is a difference here. So like undefined variable is the variable that you haven't assigned a value to. But not defined variable, it's the variable that doesn't exist. You call it by name, but nothing is there. Like that there is no such name at all. So, but we included this file, right? And it means that the first name it got somehow through this. And let's check also, like sorry, like right, let's test everything. Okay, let's comment, sure. See, it worked. Imported first name, and even here in here is the same because by default it goes to the global scope. So even like through the files, even in Node.js, where the environment is kind of a bit more strict, we can still have this variable through files. And this is like a danger. It's easy way, but it's dangerous. So that's why I mentioned it earlier, and again, you should use strict statement. This should be just the first line of your files when you're working with Node.js, or if you're working with browser, just make sure the Webpack or whatever bundler, or maybe some preprocessor, postprocessor, it inputs this use strict. Because if I run this file, let's run globals, you see this was working properly. Again, I comment this. It works fine. I add the use strict and it breaks like a compiler. But we don't have usually in JavaScript this. So it means like it works in the most strict mode, which doesn't allow us to make mistakes. Basically, this is a mistake. Every variable definition should be preceded with some keyword var or const. Let's put like var, because we haven't learned const.let yet in depth, and I just run it again and it works. But you can see that first name, which I take from the global, it's not there anymore. It doesn't get to global space, and even if I run my import global, now it breaks on the first name. It's here. Okay, I comment it out. I run it, it runs okay, but last two lines from the imported file, it just returns undefined. Those variables, uh, why it's not breaking? Because I'm not asking for like variable, I'm asking for properties. Global object exists, and this is the object, and I'm trying to get object's properties. And it's okay to ask for non-existing property. There is no difference here, not defined property or undefined property. Like it doesn't matter in this case for the object. Okay, so this is the global scope, and here what happened. So when I added var, and useString doesn't matter here, just to make sure those variables are still undefined because I created them with var, and it means they got into module scope. So they're not going beyond this module. So no trespass here. And this helps a lot because we can create first name here and we can create var first name here. And now I can use it and it will be there. CFFF is the name. And there is no collision between different files, so you can safely create your modules. In the browser, there is some similar thing. I can show you. I will share the link. So because of these issues, we had kind of people were struggling with it for a long time, many years really. So they invented their own ways. First, let me show you. You were asking about immediately invoked functions and their use. So one of this use that was really useful, very nice, was a module pattern. And here you can see this is the function expression, and it is called inside this braces. So basically, what we have the function, we immediately call it, we wrap it with the braces, and assign it to the module variable. It's just a variable. It can be anything, anything. Just a name of your my library, my lib. And what is getting returned from this function will be assigned here to mylib. And in this function, we can do anything. You can call it with like initial values, and this value will come here. So you can, it's just a normal function. You can define many arguments, many parameters here. You can use this rest notation here to get like all the arguments that somebody passed here, or you can use, as we're using the regular function, you can use special property of the function arguments. It will have all the arguments that you pass to this function. So you can, a lot of them, like array, object, string, whatever you want to initialize your module with. And then upon this data or without data, you just create whatever you want. Objects, functions, you can create functions here and return, but don't return them. So this is called private method. It will not be returned. We return my, and it has my value property, module method. Only this you will receive on the output, mylib. So that's how you can create variables. And this pattern is using the next scope. It's using the function scope. It existed for a long time as JavaScript existed. So there were two scopes, like global and function scope. There were no module. That's why people had to invent this thing. And whatever you define here, variable, it will not be available outside of this function. So basically, these curly braces, this and this one, they create like a space for a code. And inside this space, it's called scope. Whatever you write here stays here. That's why it's kind of like closing the space. But important thing is that you can access like this variable. Let me write it a bit different way so you can see more clearly. It's just the object, and this is the just integer number, right? And inside this function or this function, I can access this private variable. But this function creates another scope. So you see this another braces and the function. It means like a new scope created, and this variable is there. But I still can access anything defined in the parent scope, which I'm inside now. So this function is inside this bigger scope, and it's called like inner scope. This is outer scope, right? Just a general naming. It's not a term of a language. It's called nested scopes sometimes, because like this one is inside that one, so it's like nested, like a tree. This is the very important and powerful concept. So you can define other variables here for I, whatever, and this I will not be used here. You cannot use here. So if you try to use this I, it will say not existing variable, reference error. So like there is no such variable at all. It's not just undefined. It like never existed here. But this function would be using it, and it exists here. Okay, is this like this concept clear? How does not define this case equals undeclared? It is the same. It is similar. So not defined. It's just like I tried to emphasize this. Yes, it's undeclared, not declared, undeclared variable. There is no difference here. So it means, yeah, the right term would be declared, because like what I'm writing now, like I something, it is variable declaration, right? And this is variable assignment. I can do both on one line. So it would be still variable declaration with assignment. So, but if I do just declaration, so the I would be undefined. It means it's declared, but it's undefined. I didn't hear the people saying like not defined. Usually not defined, it's kind of more closer to undeclared. Like, but just it's easy to confuse. So undefined, it's a special value. It's not about the because you can say it's 10, but as you know already, JavaScript is has dynamic types, so you can change type to string or anything else, object, array, and also you can change it to undefined. There is a special embedded variable in the global scope. It's called undefined, and you can set this to undefined, and will be like non-existing. Not non-existing. It will be undefined. It will be existing, variable, but with value undefined. Okay, is this clear how it works? If not, it's okay. I will explain in different words or with different example. Okay. Okay, so let's proceed with this. So we discussed the module. You don't have to create anything. It's just a file. Or for JavaScript. Okay, yeah, I started explaining modules. So basically people were using this module pattern or like just immediately invoking function expressions just to close variable declaration, so they do not pollute a global scope window object, right? Then this require.js library appeared. It was very nice thing. So you could define why web modules, why MD. Okay, I was trying to use get started. Yeah, get started is a good thing. So basically you were defining, I'm not sure, I haven't opened. Okay, we're going too deep. So basically, okay. Oh, I was expecting to see some. Why get help block Twitter? Just show us something. Come on. So they created this API, so they could this is the config, this function define, and you could say I want to define a module, and they also of course created function because the function was the only way to encapsulate those variables, and you would create the code here and you would pass it's a parameter, it's a declaration, and this is the arguments, array of arguments. If you had two parameters, you would have two items in this array. So and this way allowed us to create without this homegrown wrappers, because like despite this module pattern is like very simple thing, many people found different ways to to create them. I don't know how to say, and there were no unique API, and like you had to learn it in the project. And also they provided the way to load these files, so you could also load, because you had the straight API, you had this decoration function, it's a decorator. It's not only just passing this here, it also wraps it and does something more. So it allowed us to load files from the internet, ensure their order. Also, this lib query, it's also a file somewhere else defined as a module. So it should load this file, and whatever this module would return, it would pass it here. So it could it allowed you to build this like a structures of modules. Yeah, I will answer about. Okay, so this created like a unified way for developers who used it. That's why it's even mentioned as a very good thing on the MDN. MDNs, like Microsoft Development Documents, encourage you to read it all the time. And Webpack, now they kind of tools do it for us. We don't bother with it. So we just using regular files like we use in Node.js. And we have for Node.js the module structure or module pattern. There are several module patterns still. It's called CommonJS. And this module structure allows us to export like, oh sorry, module exports, and you could set anything like object here, or you can put variable here, like 10, but who would do this for the module? Like, right, this would be returned here. So this is what you would return here. This is basically the result of your module work. In another notation, you would do like this: export and like function, and this is the new, and then you would import it in other in different files. So you would import it like this: import my function from and name of file, without braces, without, it's not required. So, but this is not standard yet in Node.js. And in browser, kind of they're trying to bring it. It is available somewhere. You can read this. So this they use this export, so you can use multiple times this export variable, function, etc. And then you can import like this by name, or you can export default. So they have a, yeah, like this, export default. It means like you don't need name for it. But so just read it. For now, Babel with Webpack, they basically transpiling it to the old way, using kind of require.js underneath, because you see Internet Explorer doesn't use it. Some features are not available for these modules. Some, like a mobile browser, is also a bit behind, as usual. Export doesn't work here in Android, so like it's not that safe to use. That's why we have those tools. In web development, we always have some tools to kind of fulfill the lack of the new APIs and like normalize things through the browsers. So you can use like a new API like this, and then Babel transpiles it into like this thing. But you don't work with this code because it's like more cluttered. See, about this garbage collector thing. So let it be like a small distraction right from the topic. So what is I would need to give you some details about like how JavaScript works. So maybe you work with like so there are different languages, right? There are compiled languages like C, C++, assembler, Java, other, I don't know, other languages that first you compile in order to run. You cannot run your program without compiling it. There are interpreted languages. I only know the PHP. Also, I know that R language, it's like mathematical language, it's also interpreted. It means that some engine, like environment, takes your code and execute it line by line. So if you like have var I equal 10, then I equals plus 12. Oh, sorry, like this. So it goes here. Oh, here's the var declaration. Okay, let's create a memory cell for this I, and let's then assign value 10 here. Oh, here's a new line, like let's increase this value by 12, like, or you have like function. It goes like, oh, you see like new line should be creating the function here. So let's see what happens next. Like, oh, we have opening braces. Let's like put some, and like, oh, and then there will be a body of function. Then like go line by line for body. Then they count these braces, and then they, oh, here's the closing brace for the function. Okay, now function declaration finishes. So let's create the function and then create function. So this is interpreted languages. JavaScript is a bit of two. So it has environment, uh, the engine where the code runs. And first, when you run your JavaScript code, it goes like an interpreted language. So it starts fast, but it has some passes. So basically it goes like this, like, let's read everything and then decide what to do with it. And like, okay, we have here some expression, some variable declaration, let's go here. So okay, we have the function, and inside it we have another function, so we need to create one scope. Inside this we create second scope, and here's a variable here. So okay, we'll save some space for variable, and look for this variable. Okay, so they're accessing this variable, but it's not defined. Okay, let's look for it in the outer scope. Okay, here's the variable from outer scope. Okay, so let's don't forget about that relations from the outer scope. Okay, let's go next. Okay, yeah, I see some code. Okay, some assignment to property. So there will be an object. So we'll create a function. Oh, here's another scope for the function. So we will create another scope, and then it reads, and then the execution phase comes, and then goes the other code, not the declarations, but the code that do stuff like assignments, creation, but engine kind of already prepared for those. It knows the scopes, it knows relations, where to put which variables, how to manage memory, how to do this. Of course, runtime, when you create object dynamically upon some properties, not like this, like it's called like literal, right? You know this probably. When you create object like this, it's literal object, and this is like more or less static, but this is dynamic part. This is static part already, so the property is already defined. It will be this name, and this value is not defined until you run the function and receive this. So it will be like put later on the runtime stage, runtime pass. So when the execution pass. So, and then code starts running as an interpreted language. So it goes line by line and executes it, but already knowing all the declarations and like the information that it could get from first pass. Then when the code runs for a while, it works very similar to Java runtime machine. So it optimizes code. It feels like, oh, some parts are not there. So I see that it collects some statistics, and it finds out that this property like never used actually nowhere. So maybe we could remove it, or they have some code, but this code actually it has like some condition that is not often like it hasn't been fulfilled once, like maybe like false, maybe it's not false but unlikely, like if error or something, but this always returns true and it collects statistics. Okay, so let's just remove this part from the compiled version, right? So why do we need to compile this code? And it's very smart. So, and it runs this optimization and it compiles JavaScript in the memory and it runs it. And each time when you create something, like say now we come into this garbage collection thing, you create something, then you assign something here, right? Um, this is runtime dynamic part, but the code is compiled for this. Um, but it may be like different parts. It doesn't know that it comes after this. So, but when you create this code, it knows that it needs to create object. It creates object in the memory. It allocates memory for it and fills it maybe with some like values, properties, whatever object. Even empty object has some values, right? Has some properties, functions, methods. But when you do like this, and nobody else is having this object, so if you would do like this, the same object would be assigned to A. Not the same value of object, but absolutely the same part of memory. So if you go and like change I prop like this, I, so the A prop would be 12, right? And okay, let's leave it here. So if you go and assign I some other value, it may be other object, some other object, even the same value like object, the same empty object, I now will be different. but A still would have reference link to this object, and it will stay there. It's for safety because your program would break, right? But if you after that go and say, okay, let's assign A something else, now this object, I don't know, I should have marked it like this. Yeah, object 1, and this is like object 2, this is object 3. It's like absolutely different objects despite they're equal, like by properties. So now the object 1 is in a situation like nobody cares if it exists or not. So, but there is some guy who's very interested in this object. It's not an assignment, it's a garbage collector. Garbage collector, because it collects garbage. And unfortunately, object 1 now is a garbage. Nobody needs it. Yeah, it's like Wilkins or something. You just need to be thrown. And garbage collector has a scheduler. And when the engine of JavaScript feels the need to clear the garbage, it may be like what it does, like schedule, maybe like no memory, not enough memory, and you need another memory. So okay, let's look through the garbage, maybe we can find some memory. Yeah, or maybe it's just like a time for cleanup, like cleanup time, and processor not doing very much, like, so engine thinks like, okay, let's clean up. So garbage collector looks through the list of like not needed objects or variables, whatever, like not needed memory, and it just marks it as like not needed, not needed. It removes the object because like object is not a memory like in C when you allocate just an array of bytes. It is actually a structure, and more. V8 is the name for engine. It's one of engines. There are several engines like Spider Monkey, um, Trident, I guess, or no, maybe Trident. I'm mixing with I don't know, JScript engine. I don't Rhino. So okay, the easy way, if you're interested, like JavaScript engines, and you can find a bunch. Oh, okay. Oh, there was a nice page here. You see, Sakaran, Chakra. It's for Edge. Yeah, Spider Monkey, JavaScript Core, JScript, Tamarin V8. You see, it's like one of many. And object is stored as a class. So basically, engine is so smart, it tries to classify those different types of objects. It maybe like sees a lot of like empty objects and says, oh, okay, let's assign a class like empty object or something, so it can optimize it somehow. Okay. So JavaScript is like almost the Java when talking about runtime, but you don't need to compile it because it starts fast as an interpreted language. Okay, I answered even like more, I think, about this garbage collector question. Anyway, you will find out soon. And the third way, third type of scope, it's a new thing for to have for it. Okay, I had just example for it. Block scope. Oh, I even have some preparation. So basically, imagine that it's almost the same as the function scope, but you can create a scope with braces just anywhere. So you can create just pair of braces, and it means you would create a scope, but it only works for const and let. So those are special const and let declaration keywords. They are kind of variables. So let is kind of var plus block scope. And there is like also some special difference for for loops, because of for loops are special. And const is the same as let, but it means that you cannot change the reference. So meaning, like, if you assigned it a string, you cannot then do like this or other string. The compiler would stop you. It's like a error. But if you assign some object, you can now go and do like this prop, even if it's like const. Const mean that you cannot do like this. This will be an error. Yeah, you see, it agrees. So the block scope, like, rules are the same. Basically, you're having an outer scope because it's in. So here we go, like a module. Yeah, some module. Then you have a block scope. Then here you have another block scope. This is not a block scope, because it's a object, literal object definition. So you define an object. It's not a declaration. You can declare a variable, but object is something real in memory, and you define it, you create something. So you create. And this is also, are you aware about the syntax of this template strings? Okay, so you know this is also not block scope. This is the special syntax to put variable into this, and it's very kind of, it's a new style, and it's a best practice to use those template strings whenever you need to concatenate values. So basically, it's a bad practice now to do something like this. Name is plus name variable. Just a bad practice. It's like, honestly, not much difference between this. I guess there might be some optimizations related to here, and also it's just easier to manage. So you just put it here, and it's clear that this variable is there. So like, you don't need to, because if you have multiple variables, so you have this like comma space, and then after this, so it's just a lot of unneeded space, and like pluses, they don't, they're just garbage, you know. Just a more clean way. And even this could be a tricky thing. So switch, yeah, you pass it already, switch, and you can also create a block, and here you can also create a block. It's not required. You can go absolutely without this, but if you need something, it's not a good practice, honestly, in the case, inside the case, to do some calculations, define variables, but it's better to define a function to do this. And the function creates also scope. It can be arrow function. And just a cleaner way to do this, like get something and just cleanly have it here, like, and the function name should tell you what is doing. Yeah, but sometimes, yeah, maybe you can see it or write it yourself. So if you define it here and you don't have it, these braces, so this let would be known afterwards, like here in default. I'm not sure if you need it. But sometimes it may be confusing, right? Let me check. So we covered everything, I guess. This browser, I gave you the examples. Is it clear about the global and the window? Node.js browser difference. Okay. So use strict. Just a short notice on it, but it's very cool thing. So okay, I just use search engine, like use strict JS. And MDN was the best answer. Maybe not the best, but the first place to start. Just read about it. It will give you a lot why you should use it. It saves you a lot of time. Like when and on the times of like ES3, it was a mess with this variable. Somebody just forgot it. Just a very simple mistake to forget var. If you don't have like 20 lines, but if you have 2000 lines in the file, right? And somewhere somebody just forgot to add var. Just like was typing a lot, like changing a lot, and like was, I don't know, creating some variable, or had like, you can do it like this variable a the several variables, right? And you have here like this, then you have string here, then you have some object here, and somebody thought like, hey, I want to add like some new variable, but like it's getting messy here in one line, so let's split it. And he like just did like this, yeah, split it. And then like, oh yeah, sure, here and here, return everything, and then like just the okay, let's var, okay, let's go commit. Yeah, and now this variable is going, um, even like if you would do this inside the function, right? Inside the function, this variable would go to window. And this could be very dangerous thing if in other module, some guys just using this as something. So you could assign this value for yourself, but some other people would use it, and they would have a mistake, and they would have bug, and it would be very difficult to find because it would be a proper value and it would be causing some very strange bugs. Yeah, okay. Yeah, you could see a lot of like something like, I don't know, like user sees some message, there's been an error number 0 ed. And this was like a error message for user, because like you can okay, go to support and ask them about this error message. How do you think, what is this ed? Of course, this is the undefined value of the variable, but it just when you doing some operations, some string operations, undefined goes into undefined, and you do some string cutting, and you cut it into like, oh, let's take the last part, yeah, and you have the CD. Who knows what can happen with the global variables or mutations? So use strict always. Okay. Yeah, there are some, why I'm saying about modules, not modules, because there are some articles that saying like Node.js modules work in use strict mode, but it's not the same use strict, unfortunately. So just use it always. Module scope. A note here. This has a difference. So the hosting, okay, we touched this topic before yesterday. So when you define something, actually, let's have some. Okay, I do have it. And let's first read this example, and then I will execute it. Is it fine as font size? Is it okay? Okay, thanks guys. So first we output the name, then we declare the variable name and assign value. Then we log it again after assignment. Then we have function, and this function outputs like the animal. What is animal? Okay, so it defined in next line. And after assignment animal, we also output animal. And we just run this function. So this code runs. Okay, then function is declared, defined. Then we run this function, right? Node hosting. So you see, name is undefined. It doesn't say there is a error, reference error, or variable not existing. It knows this variable, but we defined it after the log statement. And this is a very important concept in JavaScript. It's called hoisting. Hoisting is like general definition is like to raise, lift, go up. And in JavaScript, it means like do you remember that I mentioned that it has two passes? And first pass, the engine does through code. It marks like, okay, here we have a variable, and it collects like, okay, we create these variables in this scope, these variables in this scope, and this means for var keyword only. So it collects all the variables and all the functions defined like this, like normal function, and they all are known here. So even here I could run, let's do the same, like, yeah, it would be even better example to run it here or anywhere above, like I could run it first line. Yeah, let's do it first line. Or I will run it again. You see animal is undefined. Now the code in the function runs before, of course, as we run it here. So is undefined, but the variable exists, and after assignment it has its value, tiger. And the same happens with name. It's hoisting. But it doesn't happen with let or const. Remember, const is the same as let, but with the referential constant. It's called its reference of the variable should stay constant. You see, animal is animal. So like the first this log fails because function runs before this line, so it breaks on the animal log because let doesn't hoist, or const. Let's change it to const. There's a difference between var and const. It's the same effect. Or let's change it to var, and we see it will break on name before initialization. The same goes with const. In the same place breaks. Reference error. Reference means it tries to find the reference to the variable, but it's not there. And nested scopes, I explained this concept. It's like very simple. It means that from inside you can access outside, and from outside you cannot access. So like from outside you don't see anything. You from here you would see only outer function. Inner function is like hidden. That's why this module pattern works. You remember this? Yeah, right. So we hide these variables, these private variables, kind of. Regarding the object declaration, it doesn't matter actually what you define. It's absolutely the same, the hoisting. So if you let's put like var here, and let's put object here. like it would be name, or haha, to string. Return John. Yeah. Name is undefined. After assignment, name is John. So first of all, we saw that object also hoisted. Why I output the object, but it returns string? Because I overridden this special system function toString. Maybe you heard about it. Yeah, right. So we have special values, and also there is a like value of special method of object, and it works when an engine needs to know the value of object. So like if I would define it here, okay, let's go with this 12. I like 12. And you would console log name plus, okay, plus, okay, let me find a good example. Name plus 10. And here I would change it to this template because I would like to include this not like this. Okay, sorry, I'm trying to find a good example of the trick. Okay, but let me explain the general thing. So if you are casting name to string, it's using toString. If you're casting name to some number, it would try to get a value of. So if you're using it in some like 10 plus name, it would give you like 12 plus 10 plus 12, like this. And yeah, let's do like this. Console log just will take. I'm not sure if it will take the object declaration also hoisted. Yes. Okay, I answered this. Okay, of course. Strange. I thought everything should run in JavaScript. You see, it shows like 22. But if I do like this, hey, you see, it gave me. Oh, it's different thing. Okay, so it still got the value of. Yeah, okay. So I was confused about this. No problem. And yeah, but if I put it here, hey John 10, that's what I mean. So like it has like, okay, name should be converted to string because it's like a template string, so it takes like toString. If name is inside some expression with numbers, it is converted with the value of. There's also another difference between like concatenation with pluses and template strings. It's more straightforward. But as we have first string plus name, it takes value of, but it's going like string plus 12, and it gives us string 12. And if it was like hey, it gives us hey 12. So it concatenates because the left operand is a string. Okay, it's another outside of scope thing. Okay, so let's have a break. What? Yeah, it's a what moment, but it's all by the rules. Or you mean what about the break? You don't want to break? No. There was a guy who presented it like what, and yeah, it has even more interesting examples of it. Yeah, when you doing some non things and yeah, dividing infinity or something like this. Okay, let's have a break till the I don't know, like let's have 10 minutes. Okay, and then we will be doing live coding. Yeah, till 2020. Okay, I guess we can continue. And one thing, so I will post approximate list of topics that was covered on the previous lecture. So maybe like if you find something that you would like to discuss, maybe, and you would like to be covered more, or just to repeat. And so okay, I'm posting it, and also with a link to MDN functions in the end, so you can read more about functions and the properties of the functions. Okay, and I just realized on hoisting, I'd like to show you about the objects. So this question was very natural, but how to like to show you the way how to think about it. Imagine that you have, like, it doesn't matter which props you have. So just it doesn't matter is it object or other value or anything else. You just think with the following. So you have two operations on just one line. First operation is a declaration of the variable, and then this is the assignment. It's absolutely the same that you would do like this. There is like no difference for the program anyway. And this line just goes up, up, up till the very beginning of the file, or the scope, not the file, the scope. Now you know the scopes, global scope or module or the function, it just goes there. So now you will understand how it goes, like object or not object. So you would have first declaration of the variable with undefined value, and then on your line somewhere you assign the value like this. That's why it was like for a long time it was like just best practice. So guys, if you need some variables, just move them on top. And we used to have something like this, like counter or something, and then later you would use like even like for loop. Yeah, so like you would use this sorry, you would use this like index. You would do it like this because you would use many those indexes and something like this var, or because, and this var element would go here. So if you need some element and you often use it in different loops, you would just define it like this to not confuse yourself, like, just okay. But also there was a confusion, like to go here and check that you have all the variables. That's why we needed these linters and they appeared. And yeah, with the appearance of the let and const, now you can just do like this let, and this let index, it will not go here. It will be only visible inside the for loop. This is kind of special thing about loops, like, and kind of like this. So just use let, use const. I would say by default you should use always const. So just const I or counter, whatever you use. If it's a counter that you would need to increase, so you go and change it, okay, let. So now you change it. And if it's something like name, you would just use const name John. Simple as this. A newer version of loop is for in loop. So you have this loop by index of element, and you can also for in, for off, and so for in and for off it's for objects. Um, mm, let's maybe return to this like so. Let me show you the way, like show a man how to use his right hand. And so I use like this MDN for and you will see everything. For it's a regular for, and either they will be in the same article and they show all the cases. You see like empty for loop, you can define it here. Probably they cover different aspects of it, and they say like, okay, see also for in. And you see the property is taken from object, and you can use it like this. And for off, it's almost the same thing, but yeah, you can do for array iterable. So like it can be array or object. It can be map. So yeah, just read it. It's nice. MDN is everything. Okay, I close it. And yeah, I wanted to show you this. Okay, not this. Yeah, I shared this link to you as functions, and you can read all of this. It pretty much repeats everything I said, even gives more details. And like, yeah, I think you can read it now when you know the basics, how it works. Where is there were some, sorry for scrolling so fast, I'm looking for parameters. Yeah, here they're function parameters and the arguments object. I mentioned this is like a semi array. It's like an object that behaves like array, but it also has some special properties. Dev docs.io, I don't know. No, don't use. Yes, I used it a lot, but some years ago when I needed jQuery, I used jQuery. Yeah, it has yeah, pretty nice. But now internet is like almost free, so like yeah, I don't need it. I can plug my phone and use internet, and or even so you can open like browser. Sorry, I have it full screen, and as usually as a separate window, so I can test anything. Like you're curious what's inside window, so you just open the window, and you see everything. Like you're curious how some code will run. Like okay, what will be like infinity divide by 0? Yeah, just interesting. Oh, it will be infinity, so like no problem. Yeah, yeah, probably nice tool. Yeah, use whatever you want, whatever you think. So yeah, about for loops, mm, it's clear. I guess I will share later to this channel the video I saw by some nice guys from Google. They discussed for loop in details how this like works, even how they in each cycle they recreate the lexical context for this let and const variables, and they reassign value from the previous loop for the counter, and they assign it to like, oh, it's nice. Always nice to see new functions, new like details. Okay, I guess this is the same, but I just want to show you how it. So just clearly, okay. So hoisting 02, and after assignment, now name is Nani. So what you see here, so first line just outputs name is undefined because we have var hoisted here. So basically let's do the transformation here. So name, basically the compiler does like this, and it is known declared but undefined, and it shows undefined, then we call the function set name Nani, I don't know, and we assign this name from this scope, and it actually changed here. So we now name is Nani, and then we run next line. It assigns John, and after assignment, it's John. So just you see how it works. Okay, go to next. No hoisting mentioned. Closure. This is the very interesting thing. The closure is good knowledge of ES6 or React. I would say the question is like, is good knowledge of ES6 needed to learn Angular or React? So basically, I wouldn't make a difference between JavaScript and ES6 because ES6, I'm not sure if I will get this new features. It is actually called ECMAScript 2015. ECMAScript, it's a 6 edition. It's ES because it's ECMAScript. I guess Pavel told you about the history of this. So you see, it's like 5 years from now. So it is JavaScript. It's not like separate language. It is JavaScript for 5 years now, and all the browsers support ES6. Those new features like imports, those are not ES6. ES6 is like REST, spread, destructuring, all these arrow functions, let const, and many other features, very nice features that they improve like classes, they improve language readability and easiness of like creation of different structures, like many cool things, default parameters. Speaking of which, I forgot to tell you about this. Yeah, new 5 years old. Yeah, right. So the closure. I have an exercise. Sorry. Now, when we know what scope is, we can talk about closures. So remember those like two passes. It's pretty important concept in JavaScript. It changes things. So basically, what you think of a scope, as we discussed, here's like global scope. Inside it, there is a module scope in Node, or just a global scope for browser if you don't use modules. And here's the next function scope. Here's the next function scope, inner function scope. And when it all runs, there is another like a thing they created in the memory. It's called closure. Um, I'm not like perfect in terms and like scientific definitions of it, like, but I imagine it as like a runtime a reflection of the scopes. So basically, when you run this function, let's look at the variable. So we have some text, and you see like it's highlighting it, right? And you have name, and it's used inside this function. So by knowing scopes, you know that this is possible at all. Like if we didn't have scopes and you couldn't access from this scope to this variable, it wouldn't be possible. It would give you an error, right? Because this variable belongs to this function. But with JavaScript, inner scope has access here. And when you run this function, compiler thinks like, okay, yeah, so this variable needed here in this function, right? But in this function, it actually is not used. Yeah, you see, like it's only two places where this name is. So if I just call this greet, it means like it will run here. It will create this variable, assign this value here, then it would create this function and it would return just the function. It would not run this second function. And if you do not assign it here, nowhere. So it's just a function created but not assigned to an object. And as we discussed, garbage collector would come for this function. Earlier or later, it will come and just clear it out. But if you do like this, you assign this returned function to some variable, so garbage collector will not touch it. And as long as you have this variable living, like if you just run it here, so it will go to the last line and program execution will finish, right? But if you're in a browser and you just loaded the script, you created this variable in some scope that still lives, like if it's a global scope or a module scope and module is loaded and running, it means this function will stay until this variable stays also. And when you run it, this function will require this name, and it will require that this value is present. Otherwise, the code will break, and compiler doesn't allow it to break, right? We want our programs to run and not break. And this is the valid construction. So imagine like which work, how much work, sophisticated work the compiler should do, like to understand what to keep and what to not keep, because like memory is limited, CPU is limited, everything like should be working optimal. And also this variable, I just returned it here. It doesn't make much sense, but this variable is very important example. So what I suggest, let's run this code. And I'm starting debugging session, and it stopped here. And then I do step in, and it goes here. It's undefined, but it's already present. And you can see scopes, global scope. It shows you all the JavaScript body, all the functions like variables, very interesting stuff. The array, all its functions, length of array. You see, like it's just embedded objects. See the global. It has a like a self-reference to the global, recursive self-reference. Function. Also, you can see these arguments: color, length, name, prototype. It's very interesting stuff. You can observe it yourself. But you see the name is already there, right? And suffix is there. Who is suffix? Oh, this is our parameter and argument. And this is empty because I called the function with empty parentheses. So the suffix is undefined. This is also undefined. Okay, now I go one line further. This is undefined, I guess, because we don't use it. It is assigned to because I use ustrict. So yeah, I didn't forget it here. So when it's when I use ustrict, it also gives this variable undefined value because I called this function just as the function in the global or module scope. I didn't give it any execution context. That's why this is undefined. And if you try to change it, it will give you error. So, and now we create this function, just one step, and the function created. It didn't step here because function is not executed. Now I'm doing like next step, and it goes here, but without execution. And okay, now it's a different thing. So greet is the function, and this function is just disappeared. So now I will get faster, and now I will call this greet letter and this greet letter is this created function. And I'm stepping in, and now let's observe. So it created some new object closure, and it has name John Smith, and it has suffix here because we have suffix here and we have name here. And compiler was kind enough to give us those values. And we can access them here, despite we called this function like a long time ago, right? We called it, and that's all. And this function was just in the some variable. Okay, just notice that we have name and suffix. Local, it's our current scope, and this execution reflection, executing like a reflection of the scope, outer scope during the execution, it is a closure. Okay, this is like the main thing I want to emphasize and for you to remember that this is the closure. Now I will release the execution, and I will do a bit different example. So I will change it, and I will change it in the following way. I will make name dynamic depending on suffix. And I will do like 2 changes, and I will remove suffix from here, and I will give it, I will just comment it out, like give it like junior. Okay, and we execute it. Comments, of course, are not stopped because they don't exist for compiler. And I'm stepping into, and you see the suffix is junior, and it's in local scope. Like kind of runtime, it's also called scope or context. Context is this, it's undefined, but the scope kind of running here. And we define name, it's John Smith Jr. And I'm going out, and then we're calling this function, and you see that name is preserving this value. If I would call this greet function to create several these functions several times with different suffix, those values would be different. The name would be different each time, and it would be available here. And also, let's observe our closure. You see that name is here, but there is no suffix because it's not needed here. So it's not present in the closure. It is available by the rule of scopes. You can use it here, but if you don't use it, compiler doesn't preserve it for you for the call of this function because it needs memory. It just used it here and removed it. So just like this, that function finished executing and the suffix disappeared. Garbage collected. And what else I want to show you here? Yeah, and it will return just these values. And I don't know. The inner value, just wanted to show you that both values are here. And okay, I want to show you some. Okay, let me check if I have anything questions. No, I don't have any topics. One interesting. Okay, I have other debug. What do I have here? Okay, it's just a very tangled example, I guess, for you, where I just to try. Okay, let me check questions first. So I see. Yesterday tag. Concept, okay. Really, they ask you about ways to construct objects. Okay, so how to say, for the first question, I wouldn't be like ready right now. I don't use this freeze, so it basically allows you to freeze the interface of the object. I would send you here again. Just like this. So you have object, you freeze it, and it gives you an error. So, but it's used very rarely, because kind of like we trust ourselves and other developers, but kind of if you'd like to create something untouchable, some object that you don't want other developers to change, you could do this in runtime. But honestly, like usually you just use unit tests to cover your functionality. It's much more important than just prohibiting changing some properties. And you just don't mutate arguments. What I mean here is like if you have a function and you receive an object here, you do not change this value. That's all. So like it's not a suffix, but I don't know, it's like a greet. Let's have a person. Okay, maybe I have it. I have it in debug too, I guess. Yeah. So let's have this. Get greeting, create greeting. It's like a tangled one. I'd like you to think a bit about it. So I created some function, create greeting, and this function uh, returns a function that would greet a person. It's kind of similar to the example that I showed you on previous lecture, that you kind of configure first, and then you give that create greeting returns you a function, and then you call it with some object, the person, and it would greet this person with pre-configured value. Right, and here I created like getter. You wouldn't do this in the same function. You would create a class maybe, or object, or just number of functions. But you can just, to not pollute space of the like scope of the module, or some other space like where you're here, and you could create like get prefix, date time, and I will share this file for you to play with it, like just to see it close to a real code, the complexity of some simple module, very simple. And about freeze, okay. About second one, new operator, two ways of construct objects. Again, guys, yeah, there is a function object create. It allows you to create an object with another object, but it's kind of prototype. It uses it as prototype. So you give a method, give like a default properties, like, well, basically your static properties, and then it's just an object. But I'm just not ready to tell you more about it, so I just didn't prepare. Haven't used it honestly late couple of years maybe. Its scope of these lectures. I can tell you about the creation of the with the function using as constructor. I think it's so we saw this example that you have function like a shape. Yeah, no worries. Like you can ask any questions you like. So it's like there is no like there are no dumb questions. There are only dumb answers. You know. So shape. Let's not have shape. Let's have a square. And you have the side and you can do like this. Use side equals side, and you can square prototype. I haven't used it for ages. Area equals function, and it uses this side. Guess we are allowed to use this in Power 2. So you would create like my square, new square. It doesn't help me. 4 console. It stopped helping me somehow. Okay. Let's output my square side and my square. What it does? My square area, and okay, it's another. Sorry. Function sandbox for undefined. Yeah, I'm old for this stuff. 16. 4 and 16. So this is the one way to create like a constructor. So this is the function constructor. This is method, and this area, why it's in prototype, because it will be used for for different squares there will be the same method, and it's not a part of any of these objects. It is a part of the prototype. So basically, okay, let's move to browser because they have nice console that shows you sources, square site. Okay. Yeah, this is one downside with this stuff. It makes you to not. Okay, come on. Okay, let's just do like this. Okay, my square, and it will give you an object, and this is the object. It has only side. It doesn't have method, but it has a proto is kind of a special property, and it has a reference to the prototype of this function. So the prototype is like an internal thing that is used. So the object tries to find method like on itself as a property of this object, then it goes to a prototype and it looks there. If it doesn't find it in prototype, it tries to find maybe in the square. So it's a function. So maybe in the function prototype there is a like something. It has object as a prototype, right? A function is an object, so object has also some field, so it tries to find it in the object. So it goes via the prototype chain up and up and trying to find this method. To find you, okay, let's try to find, okay, we don't need it anymore. So my square create yes, it's not like this because it's not. Now I get confused. Prototypes. Prototype. Sorry. prototype. Come on. Okay. No, wait. Yeah. Like this. So you have this area here. Yeah. I'm kind of trying to recap everything. Okay. Let me show you. Do not waste time. Yeah, really don't have it in my memory. So another way. Yeah, sorry for this. Just forgot prototypes. Like haven't used them maybe in like 3 years or so. So another way to create this. So you can. I did it last time maybe 7 years ago. So you can. Let me check it. So you basically can do the same thing, but you just return an object. And you know this is a shortcut for the site site like this, but in ES6 you can just write like this, and square 2, and now you can use it like this. So const my square 2 equals square 2 site 5, and yeah, let's output it console log my square 2. Okay, let's take this. Just a second square. Okay. And area is not defined. Of course, I haven't defined area. And you can define area like this. I'm creating a new class. Area function like this. Does this answer? Without new. Yeah, if you just call this function without new, with use strict, it will throw an error. With strict, it will. Oh, sorry. With use strict, it will throw error. Without use strict, it will my square site. It broke here. So, basically, we ran the function, and this. Okay, let's debug. So this would be the scope, but it would be outside scope context. So if you just run the function, okay. So this function, right? It does what? It just assigns a value to this. If you use new, it creates a new object and it returns this object. This is like power of new keyword. If you don't use new keyword, it will just assign some values to sum this, and it will return undefined. Return undefined. That's it. So it means like here in this expression, we just assign undefined to my square, and that's why it breaks here. And like to show you, just like let me remove it here. Let's just see it. It was like in the previous lecture we discussed this. This goes to just global, and in the browser it would be just window. So you would create this site in the global scope, and also that's why it's important to use strict. strict. It doesn't need it. Okay, I will stop debugging and start it again. This is undefined. And if you go one step further, it breaks. Okay, it didn't show here. Just stopped, surprisingly. No. Okay, so let's just run it. This site equals site cannot set property site to undefined. Yeah, it doesn't create. So the new is responsible for creating an instance. Yeah. Okay, yeah, sorry about prototypes, guys. I just really forgot this stuff and didn't prepare it for them. I guess I can give you a good article about this. Did you think about other questions that you would have? Oh, it's even here, an MDN also. And there is a, I'm not sure, there is a guy, Soshnikov. He writes pretty cool articles about JavaScript, but he actually explains the specification. He's very good in it. And do I have his link? No. I'll share it again later. Okay. 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 So here's the link. Okay, Jacek. We'll have a lecture on recursion. Okay, the basic concept, I can explain it. I guess I should explain it and could do some simple things, but still, for me, quite difficult to fully comprehend. Okay, yeah, great question. Okay, I will try to explain in my sandbox. I'll create next one. I guess I'll share some files with you then. Sandbox 2. Oh. Sandbox 2.js. So the recursion. Recursion, it's nothing more than just function calling itself. So if you have a function, okay, it doesn't matter. Next. And somewhere in the code, you have call to this function. It is a recursion. And this is the very simple looking, but very difficult sometimes to understand and track how it works and what it does. It is useful for some recursive or linked structures. It's not for the 5 minutes actually. So okay, let me tell you these two things. So imagine that if this function would just call itself and nothing more, it will be just running infinitely, right? And there is no such thing as infinite in our world. So it will break sometime after, or maybe it will hang computer depending on where it runs, in which CPU level or which memory, like how, depending on where your code runs. For JavaScript in the browser, it may hang your tab. Yeah, I'm not sure about do you really need recursion to practice? I don't have from top of my head like where. Yeah, I will share. Okay, I'll make some notes. So I will share with you the Soshnikov. I guess Pavel may be sharing it with you in the previous lectures about JavaScript basics. Link recursion exercises. But like, do you have any background in algorithms and data structures? Like okay, so I can give you the good example. I can the useful example maybe, but you don't use it anyway in a modern life, in a modern way of developing. It's like a DOM tree. It's like the very recursive structure that you would use on a daily life. So it basically has like node. Then come on, stop helping me. Then it has another node. Okay, let's have it like this. Then node, and maybe some more nodes. Oh, it's very useful. And okay, so and you would need to find, I don't know, for example, your task would be to calculate nodes on each level. Yeah, like this, nodes. So doing just a for loop would be very difficult because you would use like one for and you could go one level, right? So you would traverse this 0 level nodes, and you can give you can get or it would mean, okay, let like node children. Oh, why next? What is next? I don't know what is next. So imagine like it is a proper loop, right? Okay, let's write it here because you probably need it. And I plus let I equals 0, kind of like this, right? And you have this loop. Got next just before you fix from here. Yeah, next. Yeah, so true. And so you would go for this node. Then so you cover this line. Then to get this line, you need to get like n equals n children 0 or I. Yeah, let's take I, and you need to get through children, right? And you need to perform loop for each I, like this. So your n would be like this. For, let me copy this. And now your n, but you cannot use n because n is occupied. So let's use n1, right? And you would do the same thing. Children, children, and we need to kind of let's say let count equal 0 first, and you would do like this, count plus children. Children 0 is like 1, and children length, something like this. And you would have to nest it many times. How many times? Who knows? How many levels do you have? And if you know, like, do you have 3 levels? Yeah, maybe you could write 3 loops nested, right? It's not a maybe right function. I just like maybe mistaking somewhere here, right? But for you just to understand, you would be nesting it and until you reach the level amount that you need. But it's ugly. It's difficult to read, and it would be like n2 and 3, etc. So with recursion, you could do it like count nodes recursively, and you pass here like a node, and you would do like, okay, so we have node here, and of course you would need to have, imagine we have it like counter count 0, right? And oh, this is already bad. So node, you would have to give like a level. Maybe, I don't remember. Or you have to give count, exactly, count. So you give a count here, and then you would call your function again, giving a node, but as you have many children, you would run, let's have it a for loop, but I would run maybe while loop, maybe for loop. So you have this node, and you would run the same function for each node children I, right? And you would pass here the count, and also you would receive this count here. So you need to return this function, return the count. Big mistake over best practices is like mutating the value, but just like to not create extra variables here, and as the variable is a primitive type, it's not mutating. Actually, I'm just doing reassignment, right? Because of this, outer value would not change, so it's like safe, but it's still not like very nice. I'm not sure if it's like a working implementation, but the thing is, like, we're getting node, we're running loop through children. It's a linear structure, it's not nested structure. Children is just an array, and what we're doing here, for each child, we're passing this function here, and of course we need to add it, right? And for each child, we're passing count here. Maybe it's not right. Maybe it's not right. Children. And not the count. No, it's difficult to think in the evening. It should be something like, so we have this on this level. We calculate. I guess we should return like this. And count would be 0. Like a parent 0. And the first run would be 0. Would be calculating the list of, like, if we have like 1 here, so it would return 1 count plus 1. This would return count for children. Maybe this would work. So I'm not sure, like it requires some debugging, like it's not very simple to write recursion. Count like kind of like this, but important thing maybe, like, so you understand terms. So like, is it clear what is recursion? Why is it freaking out people? And there are two types of recursion. There is like a head recursion and tail recursion. So here it's like a head recursion because I'm calling mutual recursion. Oh, I don't remember this stuff. Mutual recursion, really? Thanks for the note. Okay. Mutual recursion. Really? And what's the difference? Mutual recursion is odd, is even, is odd. Ah, you mean like two functions calling each other? Okay. Yeah, it's a strange. Yeah. Yeah. A equals B, B equals A. Okay. Yeah. It's also. But like for the like single function recursion is like when you call and you return. Oh, fuck! I forgot it. Yeah. Sorry. I don't want to mix because I really. Of course. So maybe I even like. Yeah. This is why of course, this is why it's not right. So at some point you just return here, right? And there should be condition to stop. Or this was condition to stop. Maybe I wrote it in not a very good example. So imagine this is like, I'm not prepared for the loop. So basically, important things. Okay, we are wrapping up anyway. So the important things. So first of all, recursion is the function that calls itself, or as Denise mentioned, is like two functions calling each other. It's like a mutual recursion. So let's stick to one recursion. So first of all, it calls itself. It updates somehow like parameters to make it work. And very important thing that it should have condition to stop. If it doesn't have this condition, it means that it will run forever. Like this first example I gave you, like it just function calling itself, doing nothing, stopping never. So it should stop at some point. Here is like a for loop. It will stop when the length I equals to length. It will stop and it will go here and it will return just a value. And so by this you are sure that your recursion somehow finishes. This is very important. This is very easy to miss, and it will be like in strict languages was like Stack Overflow. In JavaScript also it's Stack Overflow because recursion function calls use stack to store argument values. So you will exceed the size of a stack. Stack is like the structure that grows to the bottom. So basically, like you're pushing somewhere from the top and it goes to the bottom, and then you picking things from the top and the bottom things going up until you get everything from it. It's a stack. So to call the function, you need to put those arguments in the stack, and then this function code should be pointed to execution, and it takes those values from stack. That's why the recursion limit is a Stack Overflow. And that's why the site call is called Stack Overflow, because it's tricky to deal with the recursion. So this recursion will end. I'm not sure if it will work properly, honestly. But the goal here is like it takes children, it gives children, and now the one of the children becomes a node, and the execution of the function starts from the beginning. So and now it goes as a node, and it gets children, and if it doesn't get any children, it returns just a 0, but it increases count by 0. That's why we're passing count, so we do not lose track of our count. And it will return count. I guess this is the mistake here somewhere, because count is already here in return value. So you would give like a 0 first, then the count in his bottom, it is executed. Right. Yeah, the return count executes, and here we just children lens. Okay, guys, I don't think I will think it out at the current time, honestly. So like, yeah, let's just wrap on it. Yeah, you'll try to deal with it. I will look for a good link for it, but I just my brain is not working anymore for this. It requires me to think, you know. It's not like simple stuff to play with functions or something. Okay, any other questions? Maybe like we are over time already. If you have any questions that left, just post them and I will catch up with it. And I will give you the functions recursion example and exercises, and also some links. Yeah, sorry. Some stuff is not always there. Yeah, thank you. You've been a great audience. Hope it was useful. Yeah. Okay. See you. Yeah, thanks. Yeah. See you. Bye bye. Have a good night.